I can still remember the sound of the fan spinning, as if it were the soundtrack to that moment. Each click felt like a clock ticking wrong. I was sitting on the cold floor of my father's living room, my knees bent and my hands pressed against the icy tiles. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was trying to burst out of my chest. But my face showed nothing. Growing up as the daughter of Muslims taught me to hide everything behind a practiced silence. On the outside, calm. On the inside, a scream no one heard. My name is Laya, and I was 18 years old when everything around me fell apart. That night, everyone was in the living room. My father, my mother, 2 uncles, my aunt, and Kareem. When he walked in, my body froze. I hadn't seen Kareem in years, but my body remembered. He was older now, quiet, with a thick beard that hid any trace of emotion. But I remembered the way he looked at me, the hidden touches, the times I'd run away from him and no one noticed. My father cleared his throat as if preparing to deliver important news. And he did, with the same naturalness as someone talking about dinner. "You're going to marry Kareem. We're already taking care of the paperwork. It's that simple. No conversation, no choice, no warning." I blinked, thinking maybe I'd misunderstood, but everyone seemed to act like it was good news. My mother even smiled. My aunt let out an "Alhamdulillah," as if she'd received a blessing. But inside me, everything turned upside down. My voice came out in a trembling thread, almost failing. "I don't want to marry him." The silence that followed was deafening. Everyone looked at me as if I had spoken nonsense. My father looked at me hard. "What did you say?" I don't want to," I repeated, almost breathless. My uncle leaned in as if he were going to crush me with his presence. "Do you think you have a choice? That this is a democracy?" Shame filled my mother's face. Not his, of me, as if I were the family's disgrace. Kareem just smiled. That smile, I knew it. It was the same one he had when he'd silently hurt me. And it was there, right then, that something inside me snapped. Not with a loud crack, but like a string that snaps after being pulled too long. All my life I had followed everything to the letter. I wore the right clothes, prayed on time, memorized verses of the Quran, fasted, obeyed, kept silent, and now, all of that meant nothing. They wanted to give me, my body, my life, to someone I feared. I couldn't explain what was happening inside me. I only knew that something was saying, "This isn't what you were created for." It was as if a new voice was being born within me, one that didn't come from fear, but from truth. My father didn't need to yell. He just stood up, walked over to me, and slapped me across the face. The pain was real, but what hurt most was seeing the disappointment in my mother's eyes. Not with him, with me. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the fan whirring, wondering if God was hearing my broken heart. The next morning, everything seemed the same, but I knew nothing was the same. My father didn't speak to me. My mother served coffee as if nothing had happened. And that afternoon, Kareem returned with his mother to talk about the wedding. I wasn't even in the room, but I heard everything behind the curtain. Every word was like an invisible knife. It was in this place of pain, confusion, and silence that God began to call me. Not with thunder, not with lights, but with a whisper. Something told me there was something beyond this prison, that I was not just a child of culture, or tradition, or shame. I was a child of someone greater. That was the beginning of my escape, the beginning of my search, and later, the beginning of my salvation. The voices continued outside, full of sweetness and carefully chosen words. They spoke of fabrics, colors, and invitations, as if they were planning a party. Meanwhile, I sat in the corner, motionless. I felt like an object up for negotiation, a wrapped gift no one had asked if I wanted to be given. Later, my mother came into the room. She didn't knock. She just appeared with her arms crossed and a stern face. "You are embarrassing us." My voice came out low, almost like a whisper. "I don't love him," she exploded. "Love? Who said anything about love? Do you think this is the West?" I got up slowly, my body trembling, but with the truth ready. He touched me when I was a child. Her slap came without hesitation, fast, hot. I lost my balance and hit the bed. I tasted blood in my mouth. She pointed at me with a trembling hand, as if I were something unclean. "Don't you dare lie about your cousin. Don't you dare. You have 1 month. Either you accept, or you'll be sent away. And no one will want you back." And he left, without looking back. That night, I cried like I hadn't cried in years. I cried like a girl alone in a dark room, but this time it wasn't just fear. It was anger. It was frustration. It was a pain that felt like it couldn't contain my body. I knelt and pressed my forehead to the cold floor, trying to pray. Bismillah. Nothing. It was as if the words hit the ceiling and fell back down on me. I tried again, but everything sounded mechanical, lifeless. And then, without strength, I whispered, "Allah, do you see me?" But I felt nothing. For the first time, I felt invisible, and that scared me more than any threat. In the days that followed, everything became more suffocating. Kareem started showing up more. He'd sit in the living room as if he were already part of the house. He'd look at me sideways, as if I were his. One day, he texted, "How are you, Habibi? Don't worry. I'll take good care of you." I didn't reply. He sent a picture of a gold necklace with a caption that disgusted me. "I'll give this to you after our wedding night." I blacked out. I wanted to throw the phone away. One day, we were in the kitchen. I was washing dishes, quiet, trying to disappear into myself. He approached from behind and whispered, "Too close. You'll learn to like me." The glass slipped from my hand and shattered on the floor. I froze. He walked away smiling, as if he'd overcome something. I began to hide even more. I avoided the windows. I walked around the house like a ghost. I felt like everything about me was being watched, weighed, recorded. I retreated into myself. My body was there, but my soul was sinking. At night I started going to bed early, just to escape. And it was on one of those nights, staring at the dark ceiling, that my soul screamed louder than ever, "If there is a real God, please help me. Please, I'm drowning." There was no immediate response. No voice, no light, but the air seemed to still. Everything grew quieter, as if the world were listening. And even without understanding what it was, I fell asleep in tears, feeling that something, deep down, had changed. The next morning, something was different. Not on the outside, but on the inside. It was as if I were waiting for something. I didn't know what. I just knew there was more. That this story, my story, wasn't over yet. And really, there wasn't. At dinner that night, while everyone ate in silence, my father looked directly at me. "Kareem wants to set a wedding date." My hand trembled. The spoon fell onto the plate, making a noise too loud for the controlled environment of that house. My heart began to race, as if trying to escape my body. He stared at me, his voice colder than ever. "What did you say?" I took a deep breath. "I'm not going to marry him." He slowly got up, walked around the table, and stood beside me. I thought he was going to hit me. I cringed, waiting. But what came next was even worse. He just whispered, venom in his eyes, "You are no longer my daughter." And he left the room as if I were nothing. I stood there, frozen, unsure whether to cry, scream, or disappear. My mother didn't even look at me. He just continued eating, as if he hadn't heard anything. I became a stranger in the house where I grew up. That night, lying in the darkness of my room, I whispered again, "God, whoever you are, please help me." And something happened. It wasn't a loud voice. It wasn't a miracle. But inside me, a spark ignited, a barely audible whisper. "You were made for more than this." It was at that moment that the war began. I stopped being a daughter. I stopped being that girl who said yes to everything. My father disowned me with one sentence. But what destroyed me most was my mother's silence. That empty look. Her absence when I needed her most. Days turned into weeks. She walked around the house, ignoring me, but smiling at everyone else. She served tea to the guests, cut fruit for my brothers. But for me, nothing. Not a word. Not a look. I was alive, but it was as if I had died. The old me, the obedient, the silent one, was gone. What was left was something new, something confused. A person who didn't yet know who they were, but who knew they could no longer accept this prison. And then Kareem started showing up unannounced. At first I pretended I was there just to talk to my father. I talked about wedding venues, ceremonies, even visas, as if I already had plans to take myself to another country. I'd stand behind the wall, listening to everything, every word tearing me apart. Then came the forced encounters. He would appear in the garden, in the kitchen, near the entrance. One afternoon I was watering my mother's jasmine. The sky was golden, and for a brief moment I felt peace, until I turned, and he was there, standing at the gate, watching me. "You look beautiful in the sun," he said. I didn't answer. I dropped the watering can and ran inside. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely close the door. That night I locked my room for the first time. 2 days later, my mother walked into my room without knocking. She slammed the door shut and came at me. "What are you trying to do?" I didn't understand. "What? You embarrassed him," she spat. "You walked away from your cousin in front of the neighbors." I was confused. I didn't even talk to him. "That's the problem," she shouted. "You're humiliating your family. People are talking." My voice came out trembling. "I don't want him, Amy. I already said it. I don't want to marry him." She slapped me so hard I tasted blood. My head snapped up from the impact. She stood there, breathing heavily, her eyes full of anger and fear. "Honor comes before happiness," she said. "Do you think you're better than us? Do you think this world is about what you want?" Tears streamed down my face. And for the first time, I said something I'd been silently carrying for years. "I was just a child when you sent me to his house." The pain in his face was nothing compared to the pain in his chest. "You knew what he did," I whispered. My mother didn't hit me again, but her eyes became so cold, so empty, that they seemed to erase me from the inside. "If you say that again," she said softly, her voice as firm as steel, "I'll kill you myself." And he left, slamming the door as if to seal what he had just said. That night, I huddled in the corner of my room. My face throbbed, but not even the physical pain could compete with what I felt inside. And for the first time, I didn't cry. Not because I was strong, but because something inside me had already broken so much that there was no strength left for tears. I just stood there, staring at the wall, trying not to feel, trying to disappear. "Honor comes before happiness." Those words echoed in my mind like a sentence, a prison sentence written with pride and shame. A week later, my father called me into the living room. He was sitting on the edge of the sofa, his beaded necklace slowly slipping through his fingers. His face was a mask of disappointment, as if I had betrayed faith, culture, and God himself all at once. "You have until the end of the month," he said, without looking at me. "If you don't agree to marry Kareem, you're out of this house." My throat went dry. Leave? But where am I going? That's not my problem. I looked at him as if begging for mercy. "Abba, I am your daughter." He finally looked at me, and in that look there was something crueler than anger. There was contempt. No daughter of mine rejects her own blood. No daughter of mine speaks like an infidel. I turned my head toward the door where my mother stood, standing there, watching everything, and silent, as always. "I'm not a slave," I murmured. He didn't move. For a second I thought he was going to hit me, but no. He just shook his head and muttered bitterly. Shaitan entered his heart. After that, the atmosphere in the house changed. Nothing was said, but everything was said in silence. The glances, the absence, the judgment hanging in the air like smoke. My brother stopped talking to me. Kareem appeared more and more, each time more confident. One afternoon, I found a note slipped under the door. It was handwritten. "You are already mine. Why fight what is written? Obedience brings peace. Rebellion brings shame." I tore it into pieces and flushed it down the toilet. But inside, I didn't feel brave. I felt sick, tired. I began sleeping with the door locked, my scarf over my head, my shoes beside the bed, as if I might escape at any moment. Sometimes I could hear footsteps outside, muffled voices. One night I heard my uncle whisper, "She's dangerous. If the others find out she refused, they'll want to do the same." I didn't want to be an example. I just wanted to be free. One sultry afternoon, on my way back from the market, a group of women stopped me, all dressed in black, only their eyes visible. One of them, my aunt, pulled me aside. "You're lucky Kareem still wants you," she said dismissively. "There are girls out there begging for a husband." Another added, "You dishonor your father. If he were a real man, he would have sent you away already." I kept walking, not looking back. Every word cut me to the quick. By the time I got home, my heart was pounding, my chest tight, as if I'd run miles. I was at my limit. That night, I waited for everyone to fall asleep. I walked to the storage room in silence, barefoot, my heart in my mouth. I found my brother's old laptop. The keyboard was broken, and the screen flickered, but I managed to get it to turn on. I connected to the house's slow Wi-Fi and opened the browser. I didn't know exactly what to look for. I just knew I couldn't live like that anymore. And it was there, in the blue light of that screen, that something began to change. My hands were shaking as I opened the browser. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. I just knew I needed to find a way out. I typed, almost without thinking, "How to escape a forced marriage in Islam." The first results chilled me. Horrific stories of girls who tried to run away and were punished by their own families. Some beaten, some killed, some disappeared forever. I scrolled through the page, my heart heavy, until a headline stopped me. Jesus appeared to me in a dream. Testimony of ex-Muslim. I hesitated. My finger hovered over the button. I knew what it meant. Apostasy. Blasphemy. Haram. But I clicked. A woman's voice filled the silence of the warehouse. Her accent was different, but the pain, the story, it was like hearing myself. She spoke of a forced marriage to a cousin, of being silenced, of praying in secret. And then she said, Jesus appeared to me in a dream, dressed in white, with his arms outstretched. He called me daughter. My eyes filled with tears. I turned down the volume, scared someone would hear, but I couldn't stop watching. Her every word broke through my defenses, shattered something old in me, and awakened something new. He told me I wasn't a possession, that I was loved, that I was his daughter. I clutched my chest. I had never heard anyone speak of God like this. Not with such love, not with such freedom. For the first time, the idea of a God who saw me, who called me by name, seemed possible. I wanted to know more, but I had no idea how. That night, for the first time, my prayer was different. God, if you're real, if you're really real, show me who you are. I don't care about your name. I just want the truth. I just want to be free. And then I remembered what the woman had said. If you seek him with all your heart, he will answer you. I closed my eyes and whispered in the dark, Jesus, if you really are the Son of God, find me, please. I didn't know it at the time, but he was already coming. And there, in the darkness of my prison, a crack appeared. The days that followed were no easier. There was still fear. There was still silence. But there was something different. A small flame. Silent. Stubborn. I obeyed only what was necessary to avoid suspicion. I avoided Kareem. I made myself invisible. But inside, I was searching. It was as if I had tasted for a second freedom. And now nothing else satisfied me. The nights became my escape. When everyone was asleep, I'd return to the storage room, the dim lamp flickering and the old laptop making noise. I'd cover the noise with a pillow, sit barefoot on a thin cushion, the hem of my abaya tucked under me, and start typing, why do ex-Muslims follow Jesus? How can I know God personally? Is Isa in the Quran the same as Jesus in the Bible? I read until my eyes burned. At first, I was cautious. Every link, every video. My finger was always near the tab to close everything in case someone appeared. This wasn't just rebellion. It was risky. In our community, simply asking questions like that could mark you as an apostate, a dangerous title, a deadly burden, someone to be corrected or erased. But I couldn't stop. It was stronger than me. It was like thirst after days in the desert. I didn't yet know who Jesus was, but something inside me already wanted him. And the strangest thing was, as I searched, something inside me began to change. I, who had previously felt invisible, began to feel like someone was watching me. Even before I fully understood, I sensed he was already nearby. Something inside me had awakened. And strangely, I wasn't afraid of Jesus. It wasn't like the fear I carried in Islam, that constant feeling of being on the brink of the abyss. If I missed a prayer, if my fast wasn't perfect, if a word slipped out, an outfit wasn't right, a doubt arose. Punishment. Hell was always lurking. The thought of questioning these truths used to paralyze me. But as I listened to these testimonies, from men and women from Egypt, Pakistan, Somalia, even Saudi Arabia, they all said the same thing. When I met Jesus, I felt peace for the first time in my life. Peace. That word stuck in my mind. It haunted me, because I've never felt that way. Not once. One silent night, I listened to the testimony of a former Muslim woman who looked only a little older than me. She told how, amid suicidal thoughts, she screamed in the darkness of her room and had a dream. In it, Jesus stood, surrounded by light, and called her by name. She cried and said, "He knew me. He saw me." I covered my mouth with my hand, fighting not to sob out loud. That was the word I didn't know I needed. Vista. I had never been seen. Not for my family. Not for Kareem. Not even by the God I was taught to fear. But this Jesus, he via these people. These women the world rejected. Those who were silenced, hurt, hidden. Did you see me too, Jesus? Night after night I returned to my laptop, to the dim light and the muffled hum of the fan. I dug deeper. I found secret forums for ex-Muslims. I read testimonies like mine, stories of pain, flight, hunger for God. Some had escaped. Others still lived amidst the chaos, all persecuted, but they all spoke of something I had never known: freedom, joy, love. It wasn't the love I knew, the one that came with threats, with conditions, with control. It was a love that seemed whole, present, undeserved. I began copying down the verses they quoted. One of them stuck with me. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11:28. Rest. Another word I didn't know I needed. I whispered that to myself many times, lying in bed, with my forehead resting on the pillow. Come to me. Could it be? Could it be that Jesus was really calling me? The more I read, the more questions arose. Why is Isa in the Quran not the same as Jesus in the Bible? Why doesn't the Quran talk about the cross? Why did Jesus, in the Christian scriptures, seem so tender, so strong, so alive? And why, whenever I heard his name, something in me moved? It wasn't emotion. It wasn't rebellion. It was like hearing the truth for the first time, and the truth seemed like water in the desert. Even so, I was terrified of being discovered. I started deleting my browsing history every day. I hid my laptop under old blankets. I changed the router password. But even hidden, I felt more and more alive. One verse kept coming up in the posts I read. You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. John 8:32. Will free. That word burned in my chest. I knew I couldn't hide this forever, but I needed more. One night, I stumbled upon a live stream. It was an underground church. Just a few people, faces blurred, gathered in a small room. There was no stage, no sound, no pretty lights, just low voices. They sang as if they didn't want to wake the neighbors, but each word seemed powerful enough to move the heavens. And one of those songs said, "Even in the darkness, your love found me." I closed my eyes. I put my hands on my face. And for the first time in my entire life, too believed it. Jesus was finding me. The leader of that small service was almost whispering the words, her eyes brimming with tears as she prayed in Arabic. Then she read a verse that seemed to pierce straight through my chest. You did not receive a spirit of slavery to fall back into fear, but you received a spirit of adoption as sons. Romans 8:15. I froze. That word, adoption, kept echoing in my head. My whole life I was taught that I was a servant, a slave to Allah, not a daughter. Never intimate, never truly loved, just obedient. But that Jesus, he didn't call people servants. He invited them to be sons, daughters, beloved. At that moment, as if someone had lit a candle inside me, I whispered softly, Jesus, are you real? There was no answer, no vision, no voice in the room, but the silence that followed felt alive, as if the air itself were listening. The next morning, I was still the same on the outside. Hijab in place, light on my feet, head down. I continued to follow the house rules so as not to arouse suspicion. But inside, something had changed. There was a gleam in my eyes, a flicker of something no one there understood, a restlessness I could no longer hide. I was no longer just surviving. Now, I had hunger, not of revenge, nor of freedom per se, but hunger for true. And I knew, deep down, that I could no longer live in peace in the darkness. That same night, I sat on the edge of my bed, my fingers trembling, and my heart racing. I waited for the whole house to fall silent. I grabbed my old laptop, hidden among boxes, and typed how to download the Bible in Arabic. It took a while. The internet was slow, and each second felt like an eternity. But finally, it appeared. The Bible, in my language, right before my eyes. The first verse that appeared was from John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. I didn't understand everything. I didn't even know exactly what the word was, but something in my chest quickened. I felt as if I had encountered something sacred. I placed my hand on the screen as if touching something precious, something alive. I still didn't understand how Jesus could be God. I had so many questions, so many fears, but along with all of this, there was something I'd never felt before, hope. And hope, once it enters, refuses to go away quietly. I remember that night as if it were yesterday. The wind outside whistled restlessly, as if the world knew something was about to change. I was alone in the room, wrapped in an old blanket. my body still aching from the assaults of 2 days before. My ribs ached, but nothing hurt more than what I carried inside. I hadn't eaten properly in days. Fear had swallowed my hunger. My skin looked pale, and the eyes in the mirror were empty, as if my soul were hidden somewhere far from my body. My father's words echoed in my head. "You are a disgrace. You are no longer my daughter. You are dead to us." Those words broke me. But, as strange as it seemed, there was one image I couldn't forget. That video. Jesus appeared to me in a dream. A man with pain-marked eyes told his story. He too had lived in fear. He too had been rejected. And in the midst of his despair, he had a dream. A man dressed in white, who called him by name, who told him he was loved. And that man was Jesus. I didn't know exactly what was happening inside me, but something was different. Something was stirring deep inside. Something I couldn't name, but it was real. A feeling that didn't come from my head, or from fear, or from obligation. It came from my heart. That night, alone in my dark room, I said the first honest prayer of my life. It wasn't the memorized verses I'd been taught as a child, nor the words of the hadith I'd repeated for fear of making mistakes. It came from a rawer, more broken place. I whispered, "God, whoever you are, I'm tired. I'm scared. I don't know who I am anymore. But if you're real, if you love me, please show me. Show me." And then, for the first time in a long time, I slept. But it wasn't just sleep. It was as if my body collapsed and my soul was taken to another place. The dream began with darkness, a kind of absolute emptiness, as if I were floating in nothingness. And then suddenly, a light, so bright it hurt my closed eyes, but in a strange way, it didn't blind me. On the contrary, it was as if it healed me just by existing. Amidst this light, a figure appeared. A man, tall, firm, but with an undaunting presence. He wore a white robe so pure it seemed made of sunlight. His face, to this day, I can't describe it. It was as if all the things I'd never had, love, security, justice, kindness, were there, etched in his gaze. And then he said my name, Amira. My body froze. No one called me that. It was the name my grandmother used when I was little, before she died. A name no one remembered anymore. "Amira," he repeated. His voice was as firm as thunder, yet as soft as a lullaby. "You are mine." At that moment he extended his hand. I hesitated, but he said, "Don't be afraid." And when his hand touched mine, something exploded inside me, like fire. But it didn't burn. It was hot, but it didn't hurt. It was as if everything heavy inside me was being ripped away. Fear, guilt, shame, it all began to melt away. And there, in that touch, for the first time, I felt freedom. I woke with a start, gasping for breath, drenched in sweat. My heart was pounding so loudly I thought someone would hear it from the other room. It was 3:07 a.m. Everything was silent. But inside me, something had shifted. Something had been broken. Or maybe mended. I had seen him. I don't know how to explain it, but I knew it wasn't just a dream. It was real. It was a visit. It was him, Jesus, and he knew me. I fell to the bedroom floor, trembling. My lips could barely form words. "Who are you? Are you Isa? Are you the Jesus of the Bible?" Unsure of what to do, I grabbed my hidden phone, the one they hadn't yet discovered in the searches. My fingers trembled as I searched for the Bible app. I found one. I downloaded it. I waited for it to download. And when I finally opened it, the first thing that appeared on the screen was this verse, "Fear not, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine." Isaiah 43:1. I put my hand to my mouth. It was exactly what he said in the dream, word for word. "You are mine." I cried softly, like a frightened child who finally finds shelter. That night, in the corner of my room, I sat with my Bible open for the first time. I read about Isa, not the distant prophet I'd been taught to fear, but the living, near, present Jesus. I read about how he touched rejected women, how he healed with compassion, how he looked into the eyes of the woman caught in adultery and didn't stone her, but set her free. I read about the Samaritan woman no one respected, and how he spoke to her as if she mattered, as if she were more than her past. I've never seen anyone treat women like that. Never. And for the first time in my life, I began to believe that maybe, just maybe, God saw me, not as a disgrace, not as property, but as daughter. Tears streamed silently down my face, unnoticed, until my scarf was wet. In the darkness, I whispered with a heavy heart, "Jesus, if it's you, thank you. I want to know you. I want to be yours." And even trapped in that small room, in that world of rules and fear, something inside me loosened, set free. In the days that followed, I seized every moment to read the Bible. I devoured the Gospels in secret, hiding my cell phone in the mattress pad, taking it out only when the house plunged into the silence of dawn. I read until my eyes burned, as if each word were a sip of water in the desert of my soul. I memorized verses that became my refuge. "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11:28. And perfect love casts out fear. 1 John 4:18. Each passage was a breath of hope amid the darkness that surrounded me. But I didn't tell anyone. Not yet. My family already looked at me with suspicion. I knew that if they saw any different light in my eyes, they would try with all their might to extinguish it. So, during the day, I smiled, lowered my gaze, and acted like the obedient daughter everyone expected. But at night, I met Jesus in secret, and every night, my prayer was the same. Jesus, protect me, help me know you, give me strength to carry on. What I didn't know was that the enemy was already paying attention, and that all hell would break loose around me. I'd had that Bible app on my phone for a few days, hidden in a folder called Utilities, with a fake icon and muted colors to avoid attracting attention. I never opened it during the day, only when the whole house was plunged into silence, when even the wind seemed to rest. I'd lie under the blanket, headphones plugged in, and press play. The soft voice reading the Gospel of John was my lullaby. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. I didn't understand everything, but I understood enough to feel the hunger for this truth growing within me, a hunger that Islam never satisfied. I was desperate for this light, but when you're so hungry, sometimes you forget to close the pantry door. It was one morning that my younger brother, Adris, came into my room chasing the soccer ball that had rolled under the bed. He was only 10 years old, innocent, and too quick for me to react. In the blink of an eye, he grabbed my phone and pressed the home button. "Why do you have that cross app on your phone?" he asked, turning the device towards me. My blood ran cold. My mouth opened, but no words came out. I jumped up, nearly tripping on the sheets. "Give me the phone," I shouted. He pulled back, his face grim. "Is it the Bible? Are you reading the Bible?" I ran to lock the door, clutching the phone tightly, but it was too late. I ran out of the room, calling for our mother, feeling a whirlwind of fear, anger, and despair suffocate me. I had mere seconds, maybe minutes, before everything changed forever. I stood there, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it was about to burst from my chest, clutching my phone as if it were my only protection. I looked out the window. Would I even escape? Where would I go? Outside, the sun was shining, but the streets felt cold and dangerous. And then I heard that voice, my mother's voice, sharp, hard as a blow. Before I could think, she was in the room. "What can I say? Is it true?" she asked, whispering angrily. Her face was red, almost as if it were about to explode. Soon, my father walked in behind her, his belt in his hand, already unfastened, as if he knew exactly what he was going to do, even without hearing everything. My little brother stood in the doorway, his eyes huge, trembling. I couldn't deny it. I no longer had the strength to hide anything. "Yes," I said softly. "I was reading and listening." I'd barely finished the sentence when my mother screamed as if I were a possessed demon. She lunged forward and slapped me so hard my head spun. I staggered back, trying to steady myself. "You cursed child," she screamed. "You've brought shame upon this house. Do you want all his wrath to fall on us?" I tried to explain. "I just wanted to learn." "Learn what?" my father yelled, his voice filled with fury. "Blasphemy. Are you trying to become a Christian?" In an instant, he whipped my back with the belt. Once, twice. I fell to the ground, screaming, not only from the pain, but from the fear and shock of seeing the man who taught me to ride a bike hurt me like that. My mother grabbed my phone and threw it on the floor. It cracked. Without mercy, she picked it up and threw it against the wall until it shattered into pieces. "You think you're fooling anyone by hiding this on your phone?" she hissed. "We're watching, and you'll regret it, or may God have mercy on you." They dragged me back into the room and locked the door from the outside. No phone, no one to help me, nothing but the light streaming in through the cracked window. Lying on the mattress, my back burning and my soul shattered, I heard the voices outside. My father said, "She's been bewitched. We need to take her to the MI." No, My uncle added. "If they find out, we will be humiliated. So what do we do?" My mother asked. Silence. And then, the answer that broke something inside me forever. She'll stay locked away until she forgets the lies she's been hearing. What if she doesn't forget? The question hung in the air. The silence that followed was colder than anything. Then the soft, cruel voice that will never leave my mind. "Then she is no longer our daughter." My pillow sank into tears. I screamed inside myself, with all my remaining strength, unable to make a sound. "Man in white, Jesus, if you are real, please help me. I'm scared." And in that silence, there came no vision, no voice. A strange, inexplicable peace came. Even trapped in that room, hurt, rejected, I knew I was not alone. I remembered the verse I'd heard on that app, before my brother found the phone. "I will never leave you, nor forsake you." Hebrews 13:5. I didn't even know what Hebrews was, but those words were tattooed on my soul. I repeated them as if they were my only safe haven. "I will never leave you." I didn't know what would come next, but I felt something inside me had changed. I wasn't afraid of them anymore, like I used to be, because now I belonged to someone bigger, and they could never take that away from me. 6 weeks had passed since they'd locked me in that room. 6 long weeks of isolation, with prayers shouted outside the door and the Quran recited from loudspeakers outside my window. 6 weeks of hunger from both sides. My family pretended I didn't exist, or that I was possessed by something impure, but they forgot something essential. When a seed is buried, it doesn't die, it grows. And in that darkness, God was watching over me. One night, amid the loud roar of the generator and a rare storm raging outside, I heard a soft tapping on my window. For a moment I thought I was dreaming, but the tapping came again. I peeked through the crack. It was Mary. Mary was the only person I truly trusted. A quiet Christian girl from my university. She always studied near me in the library. She had long braids and spoke slowly, as if each word carried weight. I remember once seeing her reading a little black book, the Bible, and we discreetly exchanged phone numbers to share verses. When I started questioning everything, she was the one I texted, but she went silent after my phone was confiscated. Now, there she was, at my window, placing a folded note under the glass. I took the paper with trembling hands and read, illuminated by the faint moonlight, "If you're still willing, there is a way. Sunday, 3 p.m. Sunday felt like a scheduled trial. My heart wouldn't stop pounding. I hadn't been allowed to leave the house in weeks, but by some mercy, that morning my father ordered me to accompany him to a cousin's baptism ceremony. I knew it was a test, that he wanted to expose me to the family, to show that I was normal again, that the fear had cured me. He had no idea he was leading me straight to a miracle. I put on my long black abaya and hijab. Underneath, a white t-shirt, just in case. I didn't fully understand how baptism worked. I'd only read a few excerpts, but I knew I wanted to purify myself. I wanted to belong. After the ceremony, I asked to use the restroom, and instead of going home, I walked down the alley and took a taxi straight to the 12th Street Church. It was a simple building, with cracked walls and a corrugated metal roof, but to me, at that moment, I had never seen a more beautiful place. As I walked through the door of that simple church, a warm breeze enveloped me, in a way I hadn't expected. I was ready to feel ashamed or afraid, but to my surprise, all I felt was a love so deep it almost made me cry right there. It was then that Mayam appeared silently at the back door. She said nothing, just hugged me tightly and held my trembling hands. Inside, the pastor waited, an elderly man with gentle eyes that seemed to see straight into my soul. He didn't say much, just smiled and looked at me calmly, saying, "God has waited for this moment longer than you have." In the small room, there were only 7 of us, with no special lighting or grandiose chants, just a simple water tank and 7 voices murmuring prayers. Then the pastor asked me softly, "Do you believe that Jesus is the Son of God?" I nodded. "Do you believe he died for your sins and rose again?" Tears began to stream down my face. "Yes, I do." "Do you want to follow him, no matter the cost?" For a moment, the world stopped. I thought of my parents, my brothers, my entire life that could change, and I remembered the voice I heard in the vision. "You are mine." My heart racing, I whispered, "Whatever it takes, I am his." The pastor raised his hand and spoke. "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, I baptize you." As he dipped me into the water, time seemed to freeze. The water touched my head, and I felt not just physical contact, but something deep inside me breaking, a heavy burden of fear and shame being washed away. When I climbed in, my body trembled, soaked, and silent tears streamed down my face. I was clean, pure. No Islamic ceremony had ever made me feel anything like it. It wasn't just water, it was life. Maria wrapped me in a towel, whispering, "You are my sister forever." I didn't want to leave, but I knew I had to go back. We prayed, hugged, and I left as quietly as I'd arrived. I thought no one had seen me, but when I returned home, my father was there, his face grim, his expression somber as he saw me walk through the gate. "Where did you go?" he asked. I swallowed the lie and said I'd gotten lost in the store near my house. He didn't believe me. He grabbed me by the arm, dragged me inside, and locked me in my room. The door slammed loudly behind me, and he was gone, leaving silence. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I sat on the floor, wet, smiling. They could lock the door, but they would never erase what had happened. I had died with Christ there, and now I lived in him. It had been almost 3 weeks since my secret baptism when everything exploded. Until then, I thought I'd managed to hide my steps. I washed my clothes by hand, deleted all of my messages, and barely spoke to anyone. I prayed silently when no one could hear me. But in a house like mine, sin has eyes in every shadow. There, abandoning Islam wasn't just disobedience. It was treason. It was war. It was a crime worthy of capital punishment. I don't know exactly how it happened. Maybe someone followed me. Maybe my am wavered. But what happened next changed everything. Or maybe my father saw something different in my eyes that day and couldn't shake the strange feeling. All I know is that I woke up one morning to screams. "Kafir! Apostate! Liar!" My bedroom door burst open. My father stormed in. His hands were shaking, but his voice was strong and booming. Behind him, 2 uncles also burst into the room. He held a piece of paper, and my heart sank. It was a photo of me, soaking wet, wearing a white shirt, in the water tank during the baptism. Someone had taken that photo. Someone had sent it to him. He held it up as if it were proof of my betrayal of our entire family. My mother was crying in the hallway, and my younger brother was pale, as if unsure whether to run or scream. My father's voice deepened, colder. It wasn't anger. It was surgical fury. He looked me in the eye and asked, "Were you baptized?" I froze, my lips trembling, my soul wanting to flee. But something inside me, the same spirit that met me in that vision, that was with me in the water of baptism, gave me strength. I didn't deny it. I didn't whisper. I spoke loudly and firmly. Yes, I was baptized. The silence that followed was crushing. And then came chaos. My uncle was the first to act, delivering a slap so hard it blurred my vision. My father grabbed his leather belt and began beating me. My mother did nothing to stop him. No one did. Each lash felt like a fire burning my back, arms, and legs. They dragged me out of the room and threw me onto the concrete floor of the courtyard. My shirt and hijab were ripped. The neighbors began to gather, some with horror in their eyes, others in silence, and some began shouting cruel words. "Murderer! Kafir! Apostate!" I could hear my little sister crying behind the curtains. And then I heard words I never imagined coming from my father's mouth. "We will purify this house with her blood." He said it with the coldness of someone passing sentence. The man who rocked me as a baby, who told me stories under the stars, said I had brought shame to our family, that if I didn't recite the Shahada and renounce my faith immediately, he would hand me over to the Islamic moral police, and they know what they do with apostates. I had a choice: bow or burn, chant or die. I felt every eye in the complex watching me. Time seemed to slow, the concrete hot beneath my bruised body. Blood dripped from my mouth. My arms trembled with pain and fear. But then, his voice sounded inside me, soft, firm. "Do not deny me before men, and I will not deny you before my Father in heaven." I closed my eyes and whispered, "I will not deny it." Suddenly someone shouted, "Las, a stone has hit my side." Another stone flew past and hit my shoulder. They were going to stone me. I thought it was the end. But then, Maria appeared. I still don't know how she found me in that moment of despair. I only remember her voice cutting through the chaos around me. "She's a minor. You can't do this. You'll kill her." Maria ran to me and threw herself over me like a shield. The crowd stood still, frozen. Some began to shout at her, but others backed away, afraid to get involved. Someone called the police, Or maybe it was the church. Maybe both. Within 10 minutes, a Christian lawyer and 2 police officers arrived in a borrowed van. They pulled me into the back seat, and Mayam jumped in beside me. And just like that, we disappeared into the streets. I didn't even have time to look back. I was taken to a safe Christian shelter on the outskirts of the city, a small, simple building with 2 rooms shared by 5 ex-Muslims, like me. Each carried their own story, their own wounds. But there was peace there, no fear, no threats. That night, lying on a thin mattress, my body aching, tears streamed silently down my face. But they weren't tears of regret, they were tears of relief. I had lost everything, my family, my home, my name, but I had found Christ, and that somehow was enough. I thought the worst was over, that safe in this shelter, the storm would finally end. But I was wrong. What came next nearly destroyed me completely. The news spread like wildfire. A young Muslim woman, the daughter of a respected family, had abandoned Islam and been baptized. In the eyes of our society, I had committed the worst of crimes. The shame was not just personal. It was political, religious, and public. A week after I arrived at the shelter, the coordinator came to me, panic in her eyes. "Your father filed a complaint," she whispered. I asked what kind of accusation it was, and she replied that it was apostasy, blasphemy, and the promotion of a false religion. My father claimed I had been recruited by a foreign Christian network, aiming to destabilize Islam in Nigeria. I looked at her, my stomach tightening. This wasn't just a family feud anymore. It was a national security matter. She showed me the news, my name redacted, but the story clear. The public was crying out for justice, for blood. That night, I couldn't sleep. The shelter's windows were covered, but I sensed that somewhere snipers were watching. Neighbors with Molotov cocktails, armed police outside. Every noise made me shiver. I was no longer just hiding. I was being hunted. 2 days later, I was summoned to appear before a Sharia court, even though I was a minor, and had already applied for asylum. The court insisted it had jurisdiction because I was born Muslim. The church lawyer held my hand, and beside him was an elderly man named Mr. Dam Lahi, who gave me strength to face that moment. He leaned toward me and whispered softly, "Don't be afraid. Even if they threaten you, you are not alone. Christ is with you in this furnace." When I entered the room, my heart raced. To my left, sitting, was the I Am of our local mosque. To my right, my father, impassive, his eyes cold as winter, unblinking. My mother wasn't there. My brother wasn't there either. Only him. Behind me, murmurs filled the gallery. Reporters, girls from the community, and people who just wanted to see me burn. The judge then spoke, in that voice that seemed to crush all hope. "Renounce your conversion. We are giving you a chance to repent, to return to your rector. You are young. You were deceived. Recite the Shahada, and you will be forgiven." My legs trembled. The crowd surged forward, hungry for my defeat. My father watched me, but something deeper, something inside me, held me steady. I looked at the judge, and in a soft but clear voice, I replied, "I have not been deceived. I have known Jesus. He saved me from death, and I cannot deny him. He is my Lord." A gasp filled the room. The imam stood up furiously. "She's mocking our faith," he shouted. "She should be hanged in public. She's dangerous." The judge called for order, but my father stood up too. His voice was calm, but each word cut like a blade. "If she were still my daughter, I would deal with her myself. But she's dead to me. May the law take her." My throat burned. My eyes filled with tears, but I didn't cry. The court adjourned for deliberation. As we waited in a back room, Mr. Damlahi leaned over and said to me quietly, "There's a chance they'll order your rehabilitation, but if it's considered treason..." He didn't finish the sentence. That night, I was placed in protective custody. I couldn't leave the shelter compound. Guards were stationed outside, and all my calls were monitored. Not even Maria could visit me. We were informed that a fatwa had been issued against me, a public death warrant. The message circulated on Telegram and WhatsApp, with my photo tagged, and a reward of 50,000 naira for anyone who could purify the land of my presence. That same night, the shelter received a bomb threat. We were hastily evacuated in the middle of the night and driven to safety. After hours of silence, I arrived at a Christian missionary clinic, isolated in the countryside. No phone, no internet, just prayer, medicine, and silence. When I arrived, My body finally gave out. All the trauma, the beatings, everything came crashing down on me. I developed a fever. My wounds became infected. I lost weight, and I could barely eat. But even in that place of pain and weakness, I felt closer to Christ than I had ever felt before. Lying in bed, trembling, I imagined Jesus sitting beside me. When the nightmares came, I clung to his promise. I was never alone. Even when everything seemed to be falling apart, that promise echoed in my heart. I will never leave you nor forsake you. When I finally managed to open the Bible again, I found words that seemed to have been written just for me. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Matthew 5:10. The road to the court's final verdict was long, filled with anticipation and anxiety. The church worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Nos Christians mobilized, and even a Western embassy discreetly contacted the local government. Ultimately, the charges were dropped due to lack of jurisdiction. But the freedom I gained came with a high price. I could never return home, and I could never again use my real name in public. They said that if they ever found me, they would finish what they started. I was only 19, but I had already faced death head-on, and at the same time, experienced a freedom that no prison could take away. Because no matter how much they imprison the body, no matter how much they want to silence the name, they can never silence what Christ has done in me. I'll never forget my first time in a secret house church. It was hidden in the back of a bakery. The smell of yeast and cinnamon mingled in the air, and behind the shelves of bread and sacks of flour, there was a small iron door that creaked when opened. On the other side, a narrow staircase led to a simple basement. Down in that dark room, I found the body of Christ. No fancy pews, no microphones, just 15 people seated on chairs and old crates, with an open Bible in the center. Candles cast a dim light, making shadows dance gently between us. A woman, about 60, led the worship in whispers, tears streaming down her face. A young man read John 15, his voice trembling. "If the world hates you, remember that it hated me first." Then we prayed like I had never prayed before. Not those memorized and rehearsed prayers in Arabic, but real groans, cries, and desperate sighs. There, we all knew what it was to suffer, what it was to lose. But we had something no one could take away: Jesus. I knew the path wouldn't be easy. Even in that faith community, I still flinched at loud noises, still had trouble sleeping. Kareem's voice still echoed in my dreams, and my father's fists returned in nightmares. I woke sweating, gasping, haunted by memories of the rope, the bruises, the blood. But gradually, the Spirit began to heal me, not by erasing the past, but by bringing redemption. The shelter leaders introduced me to a trauma counselor, a Christian woman from Lebanon who had also fled honor-based violence. We met weekly, and she patiently guided me through my grief. She taught me to mourn, to carry my sorrow to the foot of the cross. I learned that Jesus wept, that he understood pain, that he was never ashamed of my weakness. And one afternoon, I finally managed to speak the question that had been suffocating me since that night I ran away. Would I ever be able to see my family again? That was the question I let out, almost whispering. She looked into my eyes with a deep calm and warmth that seemed to pierce my soul and said, "Maybe. But even if not, you now belong to a family that will never abandon you." In that moment, something inside me broke. I stopped begging God to take away the pain I carried, and instead asked him to make something beautiful rise from my ashes. The weeks passed slowly, and I began memorizing verses not to recite by heart, but to nourish my weary heart. Romans 8 became my safe haven. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Hardship, persecution, famine? Nothing can. These words became my armor, whispered every morning to protect my soul. My decision to be baptized came on a cold, rainy night, in a metal tub, surrounded by 3 women holding candles, in that cramped basement. I entered trembling, but as I emerged from the water, a peace washed over me. It was as if something old had been left behind and something new was born right there. The cross I wear around my neck today is not a symbol of rebellion or a cry against those who hurt me. It is a constant reminder that I am no longer a victim. I am a daughter, rescued, redeemed, and there is a crown waiting for me in heaven. My life now unfolds in the shadows, not out of fear, as before, but because there are lights too precious for me to carelessly expose. Telling my story isn't easy. Every word carries a risk, a possibility of discovery. But when I'm silent, I feel the Spirit remind me that this message needs to be heard. So I speak softly, carefully, in encrypted conversations, in videos with blurred faces, in letters left silently in the corners of women's shelters, always signed with the words, "He sees you, he loves you, you are not alone." I'm not famous, nor do I have any followers. I may never return to my country, nor hug my mother, nor see my brother grow up. But I found something death cannot take away, the truth, and that truth has set me free. There are days when longing weighs heavily. I imagine my mother still lighting candles and praying 5 times a day, whispering my name through tears. I wonder if Kareem remarried, if my father walks past my old room and hesitates a moment longer than he should. But that shame I carried for so long, I left it on the cross. I still dream, but today my dreams are different. Last week, I saw the man in white in a dream. This time he was walking beside me, hand in hand, along a narrow road in the middle of the desert. I asked, "Am I still alone?" He smiled and replied, "I've never been far away. Now I walk with you, in silence, in obedience, with you and with Jesus. My name has changed, but my soul has been reborn. Today, I live with fellow believers, serve in ministries that must remain hidden, and mentor young women who walk similar paths to mine. We hug, cry together, and witness, even in the dark. One of them is Illa, a 17-year-old girl full of questions, fear, and confusion. But I see the fire in her eyes, the way she holds the small Arabic Bible I gave her. "Is it worth it?" she asked me one night. I held her hand tightly, looked deep into her eyes, and replied, "Yes, 1,000 times yes. Jesus is worth every struggle, every pain. I nearly died for refusing to marry my cousin, but in Christ I found life, true, eternal life. I may be hidden from the world, but I am seen in heaven, and that is enough." This testimony is for every sister who still lives trapped in fear, silenced by violence and judgment. You are not forgotten. You are not dirty, nor cursed. You are seen. You are loved. You are free.